Well, welcome back, everybody. Great to see you. And joined again by Alex Jamieson from AJFinancialPlanning. And today we're going to be talking about acronyms. Now, Alex, I believe the investment markets love an acronym to summarise key investment opportunities. Can you give us the names of some?
Yeah, they're super catchy. So in the US, you've got the FAANG. In Australia, you've got WAAAX. And I'll explain a little further why I've got the And then over in China, you've got BAT as well.
So what do they stand for?
Tell me more.
So FAANG, what is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So FAANG is Facebook for the F. The A is Apple. And then you've got another A in there being Amazon, and then the G being Google. So that's the FAANG. In terms of Australia,
WAAAX.
we got WAAAX.
How many A's are there?
Yep. So for the surfers out there, you've got WiseTech for the W. 3 A's this time because we always like to be a little bit better than the US. Altium. You've got Appen and Afterpay, which are the 3 A's, and then the X being Xero. And then if we go over to China, you've got BAT. So Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent.
I could say, when I heard the American thing, where's Microsoft?
Yeah, and that's a really great point, Greg, is the acronyms are really limited. And for FAANGs, you're missing Microsoft. And I think with a lot of them, you're missing a bunch of companies as well.
So is that the same with Australia as well?
Yeah, in Australia, I think that the standouts when you think about Australia is why are we just talking about tech? And it sort of, I guess it applies to some degree about with all these sort of acronyms. Why are we talking just about tech? What about CSL? What about ResMed? What about some of these wonderful sort of healthcare companies? And then, in China, there's a bunch more. It's just there's 3, but there's a bunch more in China as well.
In Australia, do all the other companies have acronyms like the mining industry or anything like that?
No, it's really bizarre. So you'd sort of, in catching up today, I thought, I wonder if I could actually put an acronym together for like a healthcare company sort of acronym, but there's none around. Like it's really bizarre. It's been coined specifically purely for the tech companies. And it sort of got coined a little bit around this idea around exponential technology and, those sort of buzz ideas around robotics, artificial intelligence, those types of large sort of, thematical sort of trends when you think about exponential technology.
Okay. Does each region in the world have their own acronyms?
They do, yeah. Like when we're sort of thinking about a new region, so when China opened up to foreign investors, our first sort of, I wonder if there's an acronym for China, and that's where BAT sort of came about. I think if you're sitting in any sort of local area, it's likely, and if you have a tech exposure, I think that's probably the other sort of aspect. If you've got a tech exposure, it's likely marketing sort of buzzwords come about from the financial journalists and put it together. But it's a nice little, I guess, checkbox. If you're sort of sitting in a local area or thinking about a region, it would be worth having a bit of a check to see if there is an acronym for their fintech areas of the market.
So it's good to be aware of what the relevant acronyms are.
Yeah, they're quite handy. I'd almost say you'd be wanting to look at the acronyms and say as well, do I have any exposure to that in my portfolio? Those types of things. And if you're sort of looking at your portfolios and saying, I don't have any exposure there, then that might trigger you to sort of go, well, hang on, I might need to rethink some of my strategies, possibly.
Okay, so we're at the start of 2020. What is your forecast now for the rest of the calendar year? Yeah,
so growing up as a kid, we had beyond 2000. We're still not flying in cars yet. But in terms of the markets, look, I think the market is pricing in another interest rate cut later this year. And a lot of people might be a little surprised with that, but what that is sort of saying to us and what the economic indicators are saying is that sluggish economic sort of growth is sort of still with us. I think as well, what it's doing from a human psyche perspective is it's kind of like the person that's sitting in Germany, and we spoke about this at one of our updates, hand your money to the German government and they're going to charge you an interest rate and give you a negative interest rate. That psyche around, hang on, why would I do that? Hang on, they're not paying me anymore. And this is what's happening with the term deposits. We're sort of seeing with the last round of interest rate cuts that happened last year, a lot of people panicked and they took their money out of the term deposits saying, I can't get a return, and it washed into the share market and pushed our market up. It went also into the property market in certain areas and we saw it stabilise as well. I think really if we see another interest rate cut, it's likely to do the same thing. People that are sort of slower to change will be really forced their hand and pushed into the share market too.
Right. Well, how have the bushfires and the coronavirus affected investors? Has it made a difference for you?
Yeah, I think if you had some really hardcore sort of tourism exposure, so if you're in cruise liners, for example, which is,
certainly one in particular.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Those sort of areas of the market are just getting killed at the present time. Other areas are probably less effective. And when we sort of think about tourism, there's sort of different grades. So you've sort of got the pure travel, and then you've got essential services like an airport, those types of things that will still carry on. But for us, when we think about the virus, it's sort of if we look at this in December, in 12 months' time, I think really it should largely be behind us. We've lived through SARS, and we've sort of seen and run the modelling on what the SARS are impacts, and having lived through it as well, for us it's either delaying spending or bringing it forward when things normalise. So we're not too troubled. But, unfortunately, the media really sort of getting stuck into it. And look, from a humanitarian perspective, it's quite troubling. The bushfires, I guess the play on the bushfires for us, if you're looking for the investment opportunities around the building sector, for us it's probably still 12 months away before that really kicks off. And the main reason is, the councils have to put back in all the essential services that have been decimated, and then also new planning codes potentially too. And then if anyone's tried to build it, just knowing how long it takes actually to get a permit and get through all the systems and get to the stage of being able to build does take a fair bit of time. So that's still a little bit off in the distance.
Well, that's fantastic. Sorry we got off the acronyms, but before we finish, let's finish with something that Alex was told by a client not so long ago, and that was the University of Ballarat decided in 2013 that they should change their name because, they needed to reflect the history and the great state of Victoria and the part that they played. So they called themselves Federation University. Of course, the marketing people didn't think forward. The students loved it. And of course, it became FU. Where are you studying? FU. With that in mind, good investing. Catch up next time.